And on the phone, the President Emeritus of the Center for Constitutional Rights and the one of the U.S. attorneys, if not the U.S. attorney for Julian Assange, Michael Ratner. Welcome to the program, Michael.
Good to be with you, Sam.
Michael, let's, we were getting some analysis of this from Scott Horton from Harper's Magazine, and I want to just dig in a little bit deeper. Can you tell us at this point, what has been what processes, legal processes, has Julian Assange gone through with the Swedish authorities? In other words, my understanding is they've already questioned him once and still have yet to bring charges. Is that correct?
They questioned him once. He actually asked for and made sure he had authorization to leave the country, and he did. And only after that fact did they file an extradition request to the United Kingdom, which he challenged for various reasons. One of them was a pretty interesting one, saying they didn't make it in the right way because it was a prosecutor making it and not a judge. He ultimately lost that a couple of months ago in the UK, and now he's subject to extradition to Sweden for questioning on allegations that are made by the two women. There's been no criminal charge, and he's very he's vehement about that he has not been charged. It's for questioning. And for me, the critical issue here at this point, I mean, we don't know what happened in Sweden, obviously, but is that we've had this huge diplomatic brouhaha. We've had the UK threaten to go into the mission, or the embassy rather, and all that has to happen here, particularly because it's only about questioning, is Sweden could go to the United Kingdom, and they've been invited to come there by Ecuador and question Julian Assange at the embassy. The fact that they've been unwilling to do that Sweden, which has done this in other cases, is unwilling to do that, makes one very suspicious, not necessarily about the women or the credibility or any of that, but just about the motives behind the Swedish efforts here to extradite and get Julian Assange to Sweden.
I asked this of Scott Horton, but I'm curious as to your perspective on this. Why, if the United States wanted to extradite Julian Assange, why couldn't they do it directly from Britain? Why this step of him having to go to Sweden first?
Yes, I think it's a very good question. One is, while there's an extradition request pending for him to go to Sweden, it gums it up a lot if one comes in from another country, because then the country has to decide which to go to, et cetera. But the underlying issue is, I think about it for myself. If I were in Julian Assange's situation, sitting in England, where would I rather be facing an extradition to the U.S.? And the answer is, I'd rather be in the United Kingdom. I think for a couple of reasons. One is, Sweden has a very rapid exception to their normal extradition process called temporary surrender, and they can bypass a lot of legal protections in Sweden. They can't do that in the United Kingdom. Secondly, Julian Assange has a huge amount of support in the United Kingdom, and that where he does not have that same kind of support in Sweden. And thirdly, the fight on extradition in England can take a very long time. There's a man there now named McKinnon, young man who supposedly hacked into the Pentagon computer to look for hidden evidence of UFOs. He has now been fighting extradition in the United Kingdom for not 1, but 8 years. Wow. So there's a lot of support. And the last reason is, in Sweden, he will be in jail immediately. Julian Assange is put in jail without bail immediately. In the UK, he will be free while he is fighting extradition. So there's a lot of reasons why one would rather fight an extradition in the United Kingdom than in Sweden. The process that could happen here is, if he would taken to Sweden, he'd no bail, in jail, U.S. files the extradition, and he's whisked out of there very quickly.
And so the flip side of that, of course, is from the United States perspective, if you want to get a hold of this guy as quickly and cleanly as possible, to the extent that that's even possible now, but I mean, relatively speaking, it behooves you to have him in Sweden as opposed to the UK.
Yes, that was your real question. I was going on, but other things
but I mean, I think
that are related. But that is your question, right? If you were sitting in the United States, you want to get this guy in Sweden. One is, both countries, of course, act often like poodles of the United States, but Sweden is really a bad reputation in terms of just bending to the United States. It sent 2 people to be tortured in Egypt at the behest of the U.S. CIA shortly after 9/11. It bends itself quite often to U.S. Without really a lot of public support for Julian Assange. So you would, and the process is much more rapid, as I said, in Sweden, so that there's no doubt that if, from the U.S. perspective, if it wants to get its hands on Julian Assange without a huge brouhaha, et cetera, they're going to want to get him out of Sweden.
Now, it's almost moot as to whether or not Julian Assange, at this point, is right to fear U.S. prosecution because he has been offered and granted diplomatic asylum on that premise. So there's been a sort of like a third or fourth party, I guess, in this case, that has made that determination that his fear is legitimate. But give us a sense of the reasons why Ecuador and Julian Assange are correct in fearing prosecution from United States authorities.
Yeah, well, I've been following this for a long time. The Center for Constitutional Rights and myself have been representing Julian really for almost a couple of years now. We've been following, obviously, closely the Bradley Manning case, the person who was allegedly the young private who gave the documents to WikiLeaks. And the reason I think Julian Assange is not just it's a completely reasonable fear he has of being persecuted in the U.S. The first thing is look at how Bradley Manning was treated: 9 months underground cell, solitary, stripped to the bone, what the UN rapporteur called cruel and inhuman treatment, equivalent of torture. That's how you could expect Julian Assange to be treated. The same way as the center's Guantanamo clients are treated or were treated, which is to say no communications with the outside world, et cetera. The second thing that's going on is there's been a grand jury sitting in one of the most conservative districts in the United States, in Alexandria, Virginia, which is, of course, the home of more national security establishments that you can count when and if you ever get a jury. And they have been looking at indicting Julian Assange for conspiracy to commit espionage. That's pretty clear from that grand jury. One of the witnesses has actually gone public with regard to that grand jury. The number of the grand jury is the number of the espionage statute. So we have that factor. Then at the Bradley Manning case, which has been going on at Fort Meade in some of the most secretive conditions that I've ever been at in a trial, an FBI agent testified that we are looking at the managers, the founders, et cetera, of WikiLeaks, who we believe are involved in criminality. So there's no doubt the U.S. wants to get him. And then there's no doubt they want to get him on espionage, which of all the statutes in the world, not all, but is among the most politically misused. It was passed during the First World War, just around that time, to suppress dissent, to suppress people like Eugene B. Debs, who was jailed for opposing entry into the First World War and the draft. So it's one that's aimed at speech. It's one that's rarely been used recently for speech. It's used more against the Bradley Manning types who actually have access to classified material. But in this case, it looks like they're pushing, the U.S. government is pushing and is going to use it for the reason the statute was passed originally, which is to suppress truth-telling and speech.
Can you outline to me, let's assume for a moment that Bradley Manning had not used WikiLeaks essentially as an intermediary to get this, at least the first round of hundreds, if not thousands of cables published in the New York Times, in The Guardian, in international papers around the world. Had Bradley Manning just sent these directly to the New York Times, to a reporter at the New York Times, to the editor of the New York Times, and the Times just directly published these cables, or The Guardian, or whomever.
Yeah, the question is why.
Do you think that Bill Keller would be brought in under these espionage charges? Obviously not, but how is that reconciled?
I don't think they can really reconcile it. I think, one of the early claims was that, the newspapers are, quote, responsible, and they only put out the things that they thought wouldn't hurt national security, et cetera. And you do hear this kind of stuff from the New York Times that, before they, for example, published the warrantless wiretapping material that James Risen, their reporter, got a hold of, they went to the White House and they said, well, can we publish it? Not can we, but what do you think of this? And they said, well, wait a while, and the Times waited a while. So the Times looks at itself as, quote, a responsible journalist. They look at WikiLeaks, or at least they in part did, as is not as responsible. And I think the U.S. government is playing off on that and saying, well, we can go after WikiLeaks even though we wouldn't go after the Times and the Guardian. On the other hand, Sam, they have made noises about going after Risen. I mean, not right now. Risen is fighting being a witness in the case of in one of the national security cases. This is the Times reporter. But they did under Bush say, well, maybe we ought to indict Risen for espionage, and he would then be, of course, in a similar situation as Julian Assange. But they didn't do it, is the whole point, and they won't, because they are not going to take on the, quote, fourth estate, at least the more established fourth estate, which is the Times, the Guardian, Wall Street Journal, et cetera.
What is the precedent? I mean, let's assume that the United States manages to try Julian Assange under espionage or any other, indictment. What is the precedent set at that point? I mean, I imagine if I am a New York Times reporter, never mind if I am WikiLeaks 2 or whatever, but I imagine that if I am James Risen or anonymous reporter, ex-reporter from the New York Times in the future, I'm going to think 2, 3, 5, 10 times before I publish anything like, just for instance, what we knew about Watergate, for that matter.
I think they already are, Sam. I think reporters are already thinking about that because of the noise made, particularly about, not noise, but because of the grand jury sitting on WikiLeaks right now, because of what happened with Risen and the saber rattling there. So I think they're already thinking about it. I think the scenario you draw is very bad. I think it would be a huge blow, just a giant blow to First Amendment rights in this country, to go after journalists, publishers like WikiLeaks, and it would send an incredibly chilling message. We call it the chilling effect in law because it chills people in vigorously asserting their First Amendment rights. So I think news media has an absolute obligation to get behind Julian Assange and WikiLeaks on this issue and say, look, they can say whatever they want, but they certainly should be supporting his right to publish freely.
And so what happens now is Julian Assange, if he gets into an Ecuadorian diplomatic, car with a diplomatic license plate, I assume, and drives to the airport, I mean, is there any sort of scenario where there is safe passage, or is it one of those things like if there's any opportunity? I mean, let me take it in stages. If he gets into an Ecuadorian car in the embassy and they drive outside onto the streets of Britain, can he be stopped and pulled out of that car?
Well, I would argue that he is a protected person under asylum law, and as you pointed out, he really can't be sent to a country that's going to persecute him, the very country he was given asylum for. So I think it's illegal to take him out of the car. It's illegal to stop him from getting safe passage. But we are on territory here that has not really been looked at, and the problem is it's not that it's not been looked at, it's contentious. And so if you're Julian Assange, you're protected in the embassy. At least we thought so until the British made their claim that they were going to raid the embassy and got slapped down pretty hard about that, very hard, which actually, I think, hurt the UK a lot. But that's protected. You leave that embassy, I think it's in an area in which the British will say there's not precedent for us to prevent arresting him, and we will. And so I think that's a high risk for Julian Assange to leave that embassy. So what has to happen now is there has to be negotiations to get him a safe passage to Ecuador, which I think he's entitled to under international law. And when I opened this discussion with you, I said what's crazy to me is this, and what makes one very suspicious is the fact that there's been no effort by Sweden to come and question him in the UK, no effort by the United States to say we have no plans to prosecute him, no efforts by the United Kingdom to say if we send him to Sweden, he can't be forwarded to the United States. So it looks to me like everything's at play here from the major countries to try and get him into the hands of the United States. And I do think it's a problem now because this is not, even if this were a grand embassy, as during the Cold War people lived in for 12 or 15 years, like Cardinal Machinsky in Hungary, this is some small little embassy, and Julian Assange is in a study there. How long can he stay there? How long will this diplomatic, standoff go on? I can't say. Right now, I think Julian Assange, because of what's happened over the last couple of days with Britain acting with such saber-rattling toward a small country, has been pushing heavily in WikiLeaks in Julian Assange's favor.
And so, I mean, are you are aware of any negotiations that are going on between the Ecuadorians and the Brits, or Ecuadorians and the Swedes and the U.S.? I mean, are you aware of what negotiations are happening now?
At this very moment, I'm not. I haven't checked in today or yesterday, but over the last few weeks, there have been extensive efforts by the Ecuadorians to get the Swedes to either come to the United Kingdom, which they did not do, or to get guarantees of whatever of a kind that can protect Julian from being sent to the United States from Sweden. Julian Assange would go to Sweden tomorrow if he had the protection from Sweden or the United Kingdom or from the United States, saying he will not be extradited to the United States. Because what he fears here is the United States. The Swedish matter, whatever happened in Sweden, will be resolved one way or another. We're not talking about life sentences here like we're talking about in the United States. We're not talking about conditions where he never will see the light of day for 40 years.
So he has been explicit that he is willing to face any legal consequences out of these accusations of sexual assault in Sweden, as long as he has assurance that he will not be extradited to the U.S. So he is fully 100% committed to facing those charges if he has the protection of no extradition to the United States.
Yes, he's been very clear on that. If he can get guaranteed no extradition to the U.S., he will go to Sweden. He will answer the sexual misconduct allegations. And I just want to say a couple of things that some people occasionally call them charges. He has not been charged in Sweden. There are allegations against him regarding sexual misconduct. He is willing to answer those. He's willing to go to Sweden on the one condition that he will not be extradited to the United States. It's not Sweden he fears. Sweden is an unbroken link in the chain of going to the United States, and that's what he was given asylum for what would happen to him if and when the U.S. gets its hands on him.
And so, do you have any sense of what happens now? I guess it's just waiting to see if there can be. I guess it's either we're going to do some negotiations or hope for an administration, either the U.S. administration changing its mind. I mean, clearly there's obviously some pressure here, right? Because Britain's actions of questioning whether or not they're going to storm the embassy seem to be pretty unprecedented. For them to do this because there's a suspect who needs to be questioned on a sexual assault. I mean, that seems to be just...
Seems crazy, right?
It's just impossible
How did this happen?
Imagine that's what this is about. So clearly they're getting either they're upset and want to sort of unilaterally decide, like, we want to push him to Sweden with the hopes that he'll be extradited to the United States, or the U.S. is pushing them. But clearly it can't just be about that. That just seems...
No, it seems crazy. The whole thing seems crazy to me, and that's why, one of the points should clearly be to push Sweden to go there and question the guy. I mean, that should happen. Sweden's done this before. They've done this in other cases. There's a recent precedent. They did it. They sent somebody to Serbia to question somebody about allegations involving a murder. I mean, they do it. And why they aren't doing it here is inexplicable, and why the British would go so far outside of the law to say we're going to storm the embassy seems completely nuts to me if we were only talking about Julian Assange answering questions about sexual misconduct in Sweden.
Do you think, let me ask you this, do you think that the Swedish authorities are reluctant to charge Julian Assange because that would complicate extraditing him to the United States?
I don't know the answer to that, Sam. They have. That's what Sweden has that other countries don't have. If he were extradited to Sweden, and even if he were charged, it's my understanding that if the U.S. asks for him, they can do something called temporary or conditional surrender. They can surrender him to the United States in a faster manner than normal extradition, even though they have charges pending against him in Sweden. They don't, as I said, but even assuming if they were to charge him, he could still be extradited to the United States. But it does, I agree with you, it gets a bit more complicated.
And I would think not just complicated from a legal perspective, but I would also imagine from a political perspective that to the extent that Assange does not have support in Sweden, that the Swedish population would be a little bit more upset about the notion that this guy is not going to address charges of sexual assault, but rather is going to the United States. I mean, that seems to me to present a slightly different political equation for the Swedish government.
I agree with that, Sam. While always reiterating at this point, there's only allegations, and it's conceivable that there's only allegations because maybe they don't have enough evidence to indict him yet, or to charge him with the crime, or it's equivocal enough that they need to hear from him. So I don't know the answer about Sweden. I don't know anything about the Swedish actual merits, but I know that all it is now is allegations, and that he has not been charged with the crime.
Michael Ratner, the President Emeritus of the Center for Constitutional Rights and attorney for U.S. Attorney for Julian Assange. Thank you so much for
Thank you very much, Sam. It's always good to be with you.